And the gravity of prosperity is a center of mass that gets denser and increases in its magnetism as you allow yourself to be more awesome in life. And that's recognizing what's beautiful in your life. That's taking these perspectives of like you can't make mistakes and you're always on the right path, even when it feels you're so far away from it. And the more you do these things that we're talking about right now, the more you trust that if you're going to achieve success, it's because of this greater force. It's because of its destiny. And no matter how much failure you face along the way, and I've had a lot of failure, it's always led to more success. And maybe that's because I choose it to be that way and I choose to see it that way. So it doesn't hold me down. That hindsight window has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. And what that's done is increased this magnetism that I feel, this weight that I feel of this give and take of energy in my life. And it does have to be that give and take, the same way as Marissa says it, that increases that gravity of prosperity so that things are drawn to you and that you are the gravity well that things are drawn to and other people are drawn to. And then you can give that extra energy that you have to others because it's never going to leave you.
It feels like a real honor to interview you today, Skip. So thank you so much. And sort of one of the wonderful things you do for this company, but also this community, is really helping people unlock and sustain a much greater level of success. It's one of the reasons why we do webinars like this. So looking at your career, you're still a young man, and yet you've achieved all of these successes in different areas, different companies, different industries. Objectively, you seem very successful, but I'm curious, just as a human, do you always feel successful?
You know, there is something I think about a lot that I would want to implant in the consciousness of all of humanity, which is what I call meta emotion. And so the term meta sort of means to sit above or to sit underneath, if you will, the foundation or maybe like the sky above. And meta emotion is how I feel about how I feel. And it's something I go back to a lot. So how I feel is I'm sad or I'm angry or I'm excited or enthusiastic. How I feel about those feelings is meta emotion. And my friends have a joke with me and my family as well. And they'll come up to me and say, hey, Skip, on a scale of 9 to 10, how are you feeling today? Because they know if they ask 1 to 10, I'm usually going to answer above 9 or really close to it. Usually like 9.5 to 9.9. Sometimes there's a 10 in there. And I always answer with my meta emotion because after a lot of years and a lot of practice, I think I connect a lot more with how I feel about my feelings. And similar to the David Hawkins scale that we reference in Stefanos Sifandos' True Love interview, I think I recognize that within the frequency of enlightenment, according to David Hawkins, the highest frequency that they measured in that particular study, all of the frequencies are within that frequency, which means shame is in enlightenment, fear, guilt, love, confidence, all of those things, courage, they're all inside of that frequency of enlightenment. So I think the closer I've gotten to being connected with meta emotion, the easier it is to experience suffering or hardship without it taking a toll on my soul.
So how do you feel about your success?
Before the Renaissance, and I might be misquoting certain dates in this story, there was a period of time where humans were deeply religious, if you will. Everyone thought that there was like a sun god, and throughout, civilizations and history, there were various deities that people would worship. And all of those things in their life were up to those deities or those godlike figures that they either imagined or maybe were real for some of them. And that's a whole philosophical black hole that we could go into at some point. But at one point, and I believe it was the Renaissance, humans started believing that they were the creators, that they were the brilliance and the geniuses, and the things that they did that were amazing in the world were not up to the gods, it was up to them. And the rates of depression and anxiety and suicide quintupled in that period of time, or went up dramatically. Because when someone would create a masterpiece, or when someone would have a massive success, they would say, wow, I did that. And then when they would have a failure, they would say, oh, I did that. And at some point, humanity came back around after learning for a couple hundred years to saying, okay, maybe it's up to God. Maybe my masterpiece was something that I channeled, or maybe it was something that was inspired by a greater source of intelligence or motivation. And they gave it, again, different names, which is the modern religions we mostly think of today. And from that parable, or from that either true or false story of how I remember it, or if it was even real to begin with, I think it's really been an amazing anchor for me to always ask the question and kind of align with the statement that any success that I have is not me. And gosh, I've done some wild things in my life, wild failures and wild successes. And I would say the best things I've ever done weren't me. It was ideas that came to me out of thin air. It was moments of inspiration where I felt out of my body. And I know everyone can relate to this, I believe for the most part, where you go into that flow state where there's words that come out of your mouth that you've never thought of before, or there's beautiful moments where, you said something or did something, even playing pickleball maybe, or a sport where you do something that is astronomically greater than anything you had done previously. And you get these moments of brilliance. And I always believe that it comes from somewhere else. And for those of you that have had like spiritual journeys or connected with, energies or sources that felt just beyond just us, something slightly outside of us or significantly outside of us, I definitely resonate with that post-Renaissance and pre-Renaissance attitude of there is something greater that is responsible for my success, and my failure must be a part of those future successes. And so the term I always come back to is you can't make mistakes. There's something that Eric Edmeades talks about, which is the hindsight window. And it's in his interview, we discuss it. What is the shortest amount of time? Can you compress the time from feeling a failure to saying, oh, that must be a part of my future success? And life is just, waves. Another Jason Goldberg quote is, you're never as good as you think you are, but you're also not as bad as you think you are. You're always somewhere in between. And I think, all of my great successes, I would absolutely hand over the credit to something outside of me.
So if our success isn't actually ours, it's an expression of something greater than ourselves, should we be chasing it? Should we care so much about it? Should we just let it be like the air, the environment around us?
Yes. And when it comes to living a beautiful life, which I know is the most important thing to me for humanity, and having had so many mentors, having interviewed so many great thought leaders, having experienced so many ups and downs in my own life and the lives of these incredible people that I've gotten to spend time around, I believe that to live a beautiful human life is to find the balance, find the harmony in every day and every hour between peace and pursuit. And so there has to be some gratitude. There has to be this feeling of like, I'm so grateful for what I have right now. But just that may not feel very good after a certain period of time. There also has to be growth. The universe is expanding. Energy always wants to express itself through you. That energy that you feel, some people feel it up here, some people feel it in their solar plexus, some people feel it in their gut, some people feel electricity through their whole body when they get really inspired. I'm sure in the chat people can say when they feel really inspired, or when you feel like, you're being a conduit, if you will, of your highest self, your greatest intelligence, those moments when you feel like you're in the right place at the right time with the right intention, with the right energy. In those moments, it's when you've found that Goldilocks zone. And I think as we experience that more, that harmony of feeling into what is meant for us, what's meant for our own fate or our destiny, really aligning with the things that sometimes they're silly, I love flowers. I love them. I can tell you potentially why, but I stop and touch flowers. And maybe you've even seen me do this on walks around town, because I know we hung out in London. And at one point, I was in a Joe Dispenza meditation retreat, which is this 7 days. Maybe this one was the 4.5 day. You're up at 3:30 a.m. You're meditating by 4 a.m. for 4 hours at a time. It's quite intensive. And at one point, I had this vision in the meditation where I was a Japanese gardener and I was cultivating flowers for some reason. It wasn't like a vegetable garden or a fruit garden. It was a flower garden, and it was massive and it was beautiful. And in that moment, it felt like that was me. And then I connected that with my like obsession with flowers in my life today and just felt like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe the energy or the consciousness that is me has always loved flowers for some reason. And then funny enough, one of my good friends is Louis Schwartzberg, who made the Wings of Life Disney nature documentary. And I just watched it a couple weeks ago again. And it's all about bees, but it's even more about flowers. And so he has this fascination with them as well. And that's something we've bonded over. And we'll probably produce a documentary in the future about a lot of these things as well. So it's just interesting where when I go back to you can't make mistakes and this harmony of peace and pursuit, or rather even this harmony between shame and enlightenment is, I think to live a beautiful human life, you've got to be open to that full spectrum of emotion. And I was one of those people who was not open to that full spectrum of emotion for a long time. And, my childhood resolution was to feel less and to be avoidant and to be open to less. And so a lot of my life's work has been about opening up that range of what I allow into my life, from the lowest emotions to the highest emotions, and just allowing that polarity to exist.
How do you find, or do you even need the courage to do that? Because there's a reason why people wish to close off and feel less. And some people are afraid of opening up to more emotion, opening up to those bad emotions, anger, shame. Where do we find the courage to go, you know what, I'm here as a human and I'm going to be open to the full range of human emotion, the full human experience? Where do we find the courage for that?
I think it has to happen through experience. I think that's a part of every human's journey. And maybe not everyone is meant to get to the point where they are opening up to all human emotion. I think that might be maybe something that's part of, my fate or my destiny and my life purpose here is to help other people feel and to help myself feel through life. And maybe some people, maybe that's not their journey. Maybe they're meant to be the opposite. Maybe there's people that are meant to teach others how to be tougher or how to harden or how to feel less, because that's a separate skill set entirely. And there's beauty in that as well. So I don't know if there's a right or a wrong to most things. I like to say always and never are never a thing, except that always and never are never a thing. So it'd be tough to say. And to go back to something, I'm curious your answer to this, Kira. What are some of the, like, I love bonsai trees. I love flowers. I love touching them, which is the strange part. Like, I don't like looking, I like touching them. Looking at them doesn't do it for me, but for some reason there's like an electricity to touching them that I feel good. What are some weird things for you that, just seem to be a part of your life?
Probably quite a few. I think what my kind of touching grass is, where I feel connected and like I'm supposed to be here, or I know where I am, or I feel myself in this moment. Probably movement, actually. So you talked about, is seeing enough, or do you need to touch? For me, movement's very important. Allows me to feel myself, or dance, or when I can kind of translate music into movement. For me, that is where I feel that connection or touch. So movement, and increasingly I'm noticing like beautiful surroundings. So it could be, I'm really into architecture, not in a way that I know a lot about it, but I really appreciate it. I notice how it changes my mood very quickly. So those are some of the things that I find make me feel, I know when I'm on the right track, when I feel in harmony with those things.
From when I was 17 years old, I got hired to be the right-hand man to a motivational speaker that traveled all around the US. I was his first employee ever, and I was his right-hand man. And at one point, he asked me to become another kind of like stage show and to really create my own brand. And I ended up saying no, and there was this whole thing about it. But ever since then, and through my life, I've always attracted these, what I would consider financially and fame successful mentors. I mean, like really crazy luck, like the most amazing luck. And I would say for anyone, you know, thinking about what success could look like, look for where you've always been lucky. I think that the universe puts those things in your path. And I think to some extent, maybe we avoid those things because we judge whether or not we should do those things. Like I'm imagining someone who's into taxidermy and who's always been lucky and maybe is like fascinated by it, but doesn't want to like own that about themselves. And then something I learned through all these mentors, and I moved again and again and again, classic avoidant. I moved states, I moved countries, I traveled the world. I never settled into any particular area for very long. But all of these mentors had one massive thing in common. To achieve their success in their hard working years of their life, they sacrificed health. They almost all had heart attacks. They all had strokes. And I'm talking half a dozen of these, very powerful. And these were all men in my experience of attracting these mentors. And it was the craziest situations. They would come up to me out of the blue and just start talking to me. And I would have no idea who they were. And I was always so grateful to have their tutelage and their support. And through that, I would recognize their poor relationships with their family or their significant other or their friends, maybe their poor health. And I would just consistently say like, I just don't want that. Like I see that this is like my mentor and I want to take what I can from them, but I don't want that future. And this is a big part of success is I kept saying, I don't want that. And at some point it clicked for me through, I'm sure one of these mentors. And this is when the transition happened to where I started attracting incredible mentors. And it was, I need to start saying what I do want. So one practice that I wish all of humanity would take on today or tomorrow or yesterday is to start to shorten the window. So like Eric Edmeades talks about the hindsight window, I would say shorten the window of time it takes you to go from saying what you don't want to iterating what you do want. And for me, most of the time, I'm not perfect, most of the time it's in my head before it even comes out of my mouth that I actually phrase it as, what do I do want? So instead of complaining about things that are bad, or instead of talking about what I don't want in a situation, I'll say, right before it comes out, I go, you know what would be amazing? You know what I would love? I would love for this to happen. I think this would be a beautiful future. I think this would be a beautiful life. And there's a harmony to that too, because you do need to recognize what's wrong. I just think if I can lean towards 95% of the time talking about what would be better and what would be great, that you tend to make a lot more progress and your life tends to be a lot better. You can fix things either way. You can talk about what's wrong and make it better, or you can talk about what would be great and make it closer to that. But I find that I personally have a much better life and I feel better, and I feel better about how I feel when I think about the positive.
Yeah, that is a real skill set, actually, knowing what you want and being able to articulate it. That's one of the reasons why people hire coaches, is because they struggle to actually articulate what it is that they want, which means they don't have a blueprint to then go out and achieve it. What are some things that you've noticed in yourself and your mentors that allow us to accelerate our ability to know what we want and actually be able to state it confidently?
Mm-hmm. Marissa is so good at this. You know, look at what you did between the ages of 6 and 12 and say, what brought me joy before I judged myself, before other people judged me outwardly, and before I took that on into my own personal world. What were the things that I loved? And then maybe as an adult, once you've started to cultivate that, once you've started to see your life as this beautiful work of art with blood stains and with pain and suffering, but also beauty and joy, you can start to ask yourself more and more of like, what would I love? So right now, maybe everyone in the comments or in the chat, what do you love? Like, what are the things that you've loved? Let's just say the past week. I ask this of the team every Friday, and actually I asked Kira earlier today and Jane, what's a beautiful life moment this week? And ideally, let's think of something simple. You know, for me, I had several beautiful life moments this week, but I got to interview Ken Honda and I got to read his new book called True Wealth. And it's a parable, and it's so inspirational because I've been working on writing stories just like that. stories in story form that teach beautiful principles. Things that, of course, you could teach with a whiteboard. Of course, you could teach it with drawings and specific action steps. To teach it in the form of a story can be so beautiful. So I'm curious what everybody's beautiful life moments are in this past week. And I think cultivating a practice of saying, what was my beautiful life moment and how can I create the next? And recognizing all the things that you would consider a beautiful life moment. And it's going to be very different for all of us. Most of the time on the team calls, all the parents, it's always about their children, some beautiful moment with their children. For me, it's usually something related to movement, like pickleball or something at the gym, some sort of activity, like a very active thing, or it's a conversation like this, these like moments with another human connecting.
There's a word you used several times there, which was cultivate. Whether you're being the gardener in Japan or whether you're cultivating your beautiful life. Is that perhaps a healthier way to look at success as something that we cultivate or channel rather than sort of forcibly make? Does that take some of the strain off a little bit?
How to create a beautiful life or how to find that ikigai, that combination of what people want, what is worth something, worth money or currency or bartering, something that you love and something that you're talented at. That's that Venn diagram of those four intersections. It's looking at what brings beauty into your life and then leaning into becoming world class at that or not. I don't think everyone has to be work focused. I think success can look very different from person to person. Maybe there's this fascination in the modern world to be a success in business or a success with the bank account and how much money you make or spend. And I don't believe that's the truth for everybody. And I think maybe a lot of people will go into old age going after that pursuit without the peace of like actually living a beautiful life today. So my fallback or my goal in life is to live a beautiful life every day. And that's either doing something that is beautiful or seeing my life as beautiful. So some days, maybe there wasn't a lot of beauty in that day. I will just put all my effort into the perspective of saying this is contributing to a future beautiful life. And in that, it is beautiful in itself. So no matter how much I cried today, no matter how much pain I'm in, no matter how much suffering I've been undergoing, I know that it's going to be beautiful in the future and that whatever this suffering is right now is going to be a part of that success. So maybe I failed in business or I didn't close a sale or I didn't hit my numbers or whatever it is. I learned. So we're not here to win. We're not here to lose. We're really here to learn. Now, when it comes to cultivating, that goes back to this concept of peace and pursuit or gratitude and ambition or hustle and magic, sometimes I call it. It's this idea of peace, of saying, wow, look at this beautiful garden I've been cultivating, something where maybe I'm watering over here or fertilizing over here. And maybe I don't know where the plants are going to come up, and they all take different amounts of time. Some might be really fast, like a bamboo shoot once it's hit above the soil, and some might take 30 years to grow, you know? Cultivating is a really interesting word because you say, like, I'm always contributing to the growth of this garden, knowing that there are seasons of life where some of these things won't grow. There are plagues that hit plants just like humans that will kill off a lot of these plants, but they will have seeds and they are capable of growing again. And so I think the idea of cultivating is this nice harmony between peace and pursuit of saying, I know it's all coming, but I know there's seasons and it doesn't all have to be all at once. I have to know where to lean in, which plants to give attention to right now, and which ones, if I gave the attention to, it just may not work right now. And I think figuring that out in our own life is extremely important.
And I love the way you express that because it shows that it's, success or the cultivation of it doesn't have to have an end goal. It doesn't stop, but actually it's something that's never ending. It's a game that you never have to stop playing.
It's a game that you would always want to play.
Would you say you've reinvented yourself with all these different areas of your career? Or does it feel to you more like just different expressions of the same, whether it's serving people, healing people, answering questions? Does it feel like the same career or lots of different ones?
I would say yes to both. It's saying, what are the skills that we're building? And really, gosh, if there was one thing, I I wish I could allow everyone to feel as I feel it. All of the things that I do in my life, and I'm not sure if this is true for you and for everyone else listening, but all the things that I've ever done, I didn't really choose to do. It was sort of a feeling that came over me, and it was some other, it's a feeling I know to be true when I feel it. And for me, it's this whole upper torso area, and it just says, do that. And so when I'm presented with opportunities, I either feel expansion and do that. And it's just like a feeling of excitement and usually nervousness. It's like I always say 51% excited, 49% nervous and anxiety. And I know if it's just a little bit more excitement, but there's a lot of energy, it means yes, it means go, it means help, it means serve, and I definitely feel like I have a life of service where I just want to support everybody as much as I can, because I see how much other people struggle. And so I guess it makes my struggle easier knowing that I'm doing it so that I can help others and so that I can live it and teach it and empathize with people as they go through those experiences. And so to an extent, it's been saying, how can I continuously find ways to succeed in these new yeses that the universe gives me over time, knowing that it wasn't up to me. It's not like I could make a wrong choice. It's not like I would go into the wrong field because I didn't choose it to begin with. It chose me. And to that extent, it's a little bit nerve-wracking for knowing that I could feel that at any moment, and there could be something that it wants me to go and do. But it's also exciting because I never know what's coming. And saying each successive step of the journey is giving me new skills, new experiences to bring to the next step of the journey. And I look back, and I'm sure all of us can do this, and you can look back at all the experiences you've had, the skills you've gained, what you've learned, and say, wow, if I hadn't had that, I wouldn't be able to do what I do today. And when I look back on RTT right now and what we do on a day-to-day basis, I'm like, wow, my journey was perfectly curated to bring me to this moment, to help this mission go bigger and better out into the world. And it was just a perfect amount of challenge with the perfect amount of preparation. And I think that's a little bit of perspective. And it's also a little bit of reality for me. Sometimes you get pushed forward too fast, or we might consider it too fast. There's too much challenge and not enough preparation. But I guess I choose to think that I'm always more than enough prepared.
Wow, there's so much in there. I think I'd be curious to know if people in the chat can relate to that. When I was hearing you talk about it wasn't so much a choice, some of these reinventions, so much as you were chosen or you felt called. And you said it was a balance between sort of perspective and reality. I'm not sure that I have had that perspective, but I think I've maybe had a different interpretation of similar things. If I think back to some examples from myself, it was more to do with environments. It's funny, we have a tool in the coaching program called Dialogue with Future Self. But even before I was a coach, I would sometimes be in environments and think that I'm on a date with my future self. There'd be something that would happen. I'd be in a room or with a certain group of people, and I just think, I'm going to be here. I'm supposed to be here. So I had it with environments. I knew there would be some kind of congruence where I think, yeah, I'm supposed to be there. And a few years later, I generally was. So I don't think I saw it as being chosen. I didn't have the same perspective as you. It felt like I was choosing, rightly or wrongly. But I can definitely relate to that almost like shiver or double take of, there's something here in my future. So I'm curious how people in the chat can relate to that. Have you ever had any experiences, any sliding door moments? I'm really curious to see how other people experience that as well. Do you have any examples that you could share with us? Because I think some people might find it a little bit abstract, but how do you know? Is there an example that you could share with us?
Yeah. And there's also a layer of something that just came to me. And there's a whole concept that I've never talked about publicly that I've been experimenting with for a little over a year now. And it's been transformational for me in abundance, in success, in general. And I think the idea revolves around peeling away the layers of not enoughness or peeling away the layers of armor about yourself and about what you believe you're capable of, that reveals something on the inside. And I'm going to give a great name for it. And I know it's a great name because I didn't come up with it, because this was gifted and it came out of thin air. And I even own the URL from over a year ago. And I'm definitely going to write a whole thing and create a whole thing around this idea. And it's this idea of abundance, the idea that when we think good thoughts, when we have good energy, we attract good things and we attract even better thoughts. And that's true. That is so true. And when I was thinking about creating more abundance in my life, every 3 or 5 years, it evolves into a new belief. So at the very, first age, like 20, I had negative dollars in my bank account. My family didn't come from any sort of money. So it was intense. And I took a 100% commission sales job to try to pay the bills. And I was a horrible salesperson, really bad. I just couldn't sell for anything because I had so much empathy for other people that I don't know, there was something about it where I just could not ask them for money and feel good about it, because I was feeling like I was taking from them and giving to myself. And it just didn't feel good at that point in time. And after getting pushed up against a wall, not being able to buy food, those types of things, I had some sort of crossover moment. And I don't know how this happened. It was definitely luck or perfect timing. But I had this family that sat down in front of me. And this was a great thing that could have happened to rewire myself with every client or prospective client. They were all really overweight. They were all deeply unhealthy. And I was there to sell them health services. And at the end of the conversation, I just knew in my heart, like, this whole family was going to have a really bad life if I didn't sell them something. Like, they really needed to change themselves or they were going to die young, And so it was this really strange moment where my empathy for them and what they might go through if I didn't help them outweighed my distaste for asking for money, because I was like, these people will die if I don't help them. Like, it's that bad. They were really, really, really unhealthy. And so by the end of the conversation, I told them that, and they were like, wow, I don't know if we're going to be open to change. So they walked away and I didn't sell them. And the next day they came back to me, and they came physically in person and said, we're doing it. We're going to change. We're going to save ourselves and our family, because their kids were also becoming like them. And then I saw them over the course of 6 months radically transform their whole life. And they got way healthier and happier and had more love in their life and more bliss and more joy and all of those things. And they just literally, to this day, they still message me and stay in touch. And it's been at least 14 years since I spoke to them that day. And so that was a big turning point where I realized, me receiving money isn't about taking. It's about finding the right thing to give that's going to improve this person's life so much that my empathy for improving them outweighs my empathy on that. And so I've just chased that the rest of my life now and said, I am going to make my life about giving to people more than I could ever ask. And so this, business workshop that's in the background right now is a perfect example of that, of I just decide to do it because I want to help. And I just want to give so much of what is possible. So that being said, my understanding of abundance has evolved a lot over the years. And what it's evolved into most recently is that abundance isn't necessarily, for me, a frequency that you put out there or an idea in your head. It's actually a gravity. It's a force of gravity. If you could call it something, it might be the gravity of prosperity. And the gravity of prosperity is a center of mass that gets denser and increases in its magnetism as you allow yourself to be more awesome in life. And that's recognizing what's beautiful in your life. That's taking these perspectives of you can't make mistakes and you're always on the right path, even when it feels you're so far away from it. And the more you do these things that we're talking about right now, the more you trust that if you're going to achieve success, it's because of this greater force. It's because of its destiny. And no matter how much failure you face along the way, and I've had a lot of failure, it's always led to more success. And maybe that's because I choose it to be that way and I choose to see it that way. So it doesn't hold me down. That hindsight window has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. And what that's done is increased this magnetism that I feel, this weight that I feel of this give and take of energy in my life. And it does have to be that give and take, the same way as Marissa says it, that increases that gravity of prosperity so that things are drawn to you and that you are the gravity well that things are drawn to and other people are drawn to. And then you can give that extra energy that you have to others because it's never going to leave you.
I'm just taking notes. So one thing that I just need to underline is this sentence you said, finding the right thing to give. So that was a few minutes ago, but it really stood out to me and it stood out to some people in the chat. I love that so much. Finding the right thing to give. Is that the secret? The thing that makes selling or success inevitable? If you're finding the right thing to give, the right person is going to want it, benefit from it, and it's going to be a good partnership all round. Is that the secret that people sometimes miss?
I think so, honestly. I'd never actually put that together, so thank you for doing that. But I do think that that is probably one of the best statements a person could make about success, is it is about finding the right thing for you to give or to gift. I would even modify the word. Colonel Sanders, what was it, 67 years old, something like that, when he started KFC and it became a radical success. And you can look over the time, like everyone finds it at a different interval. Mark Zuckerberg found it at 19, but that's rare, maybe even younger. Everyone finds that thing at different points in life, but maybe not everyone, maybe success is not the thing that your life is about either. And I think finding the right thing to gift to the world and to others can look really different. And so that might be being someone who loves really hard, and loves really well and in a really caring way. And that's going to help others. So it may not be about your work. It may not be about your business success or financial success. I think getting really clear on what enough is for you to have a beautiful life. I've seen a lot of fellow entrepreneurs, fellow business people go after moving goalposts of how much money can I earn and how much money can I make. And they just chase and chase and chase, and it's all pursuit and there's no peace. And that's why I think ultimately that harmony of peace and pursuit, that's success. That is the goal. How can I go after things I'm excited to go after? And how can I love the things that I have yesterday, today? How can I be grateful for everything I've experienced in my life? And how can I find more enthusiasm for the future? And it's asking both of those questions every day.
How can we find the right thing to give? So I think we're thinking about the audience we have here and what we're going to have in the coming weeks. There's probably a mix of people, some people who feel really clear on this is my mission, I know my craft. And so I know what I'm giving, but it's about finding the right person for whom that's the right fit. And there are some people who are like, well, I'm kind of good at a lot of things, but I'm not sure I'm world class at any of them or what I should focus on. How can people find the right thing for them to be giving to others?
Start right now. Just start giving right now what you can. Because you can't make mistakes. That's not a thing that happens. It's all going to be for a purpose. But if you wait to give, that's going to be tougher. It's going to be tougher to wait and try to find the perfect thing and try to find the right thing. It's always going to be evolving. I think for a lot of my life, I always wanted to be this like mega, like the gift that Eric, that speaker, had offered me, like to go on stage and speak around the world. And I got offered that at such a young age. And I could have said yes, but for some reason I said no. You could look at that as a mistake, but I could also look at it as it wasn't right then. And maybe it would be right later. So I think it's going to always evolve because like now, I'm here leading this mission for this mega influential company in the world. I could have never guessed that back then. I felt so deeply unworthy, deeply unworthy, where I ghosted that guy for years after he offered me that opportunity. Because I was like, you got the wrong guy. I'm not that guy. I can't go and do that back then. And so I've been on this journey, like we all are, on getting more worthy or building that gravity of prosperity, if you will. And so if you're looking for what's the right thing to give, you already have it right now. Give what you can now that makes you feel good and makes others feel good. And then just keep getting better at giving. And opportunities will present themselves, but you have to harmonize that with that worthiness conversation. Because sometimes opportunities will pop up and you'll be too scared to say yes, maybe. But you could also look at that fear and say, oh, that fear is part of that enlightenment. Because remember, all of those things are part of enlightenment. So fear, shame, guilt, those are all beautiful emotions, or they can be if you want them to be. And so I think give now, give what you can, help people now. And it's funny because when I teach media workshops about how to succeed on Instagram or YouTube, it's the same thing. Like give what you can right now, and I promise you, you'll get better at giving. But if you keep trying to make the perfect thing, you'll never make it, or it'll take a really long time. Now, that being said, always and never are never a thing. So maybe for some people, spending 20 years building something in the background or 2 months building something in the background, like we've been launching this summit for 6 months, it took a while, but I knew it was the right thing. I could feel it was the right thing to do. And so next week, this summit, if it's a massive success, it won't be because of me. It won't even necessarily be because of the whole team. It'll be because we were all guided to do this thing. And that's where it originally came from. And if it's a failure, we were all guided to do this thing. I'm sure we learned a lot along the way.
Thank you for saying that, because I think that's a better question people can ask themselves than the how can I give? What should I give? What's my right thing? The decision I am going to give right now. What can I give right now is often a more empowering question. People who might get stuck in the how and the what and the when. So thinking about how we can wrap some of these things together. I also love what you said about abundance almost as like a gravitational field. How can people create that? How can people start to strengthen their force field? How can we start to channel, resonate, or just be more abundant? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's the harmony between giving and worthiness, giving and receiving, asking and taking. So you've got to ask, what can I give now? And maybe I'm not good enough to ask. Maybe I don't believe I'm good enough to ask. Or maybe I just need to format that giving in a different way. So someone could say like, oh, I'm going to do a free 10 minutes therapy session to anyone that calls this phone number or jumps into this Zoom room. And that's one way to start giving. And hopefully you're in it for the reason of helping those people that come on, not to like get them as clients, no ulterior motive, because that energy feels different. That gravity is a different gravity. But if the gravity is going into it with the intention of, I'm going to give as much as I possibly can, and then I'm going to ask, and if I really helped, people will give back. And so I think when it comes to formulating offers, or when it comes to formulating that financial success, the business success for people, it's really saying, how can I set the client or the business or whatever I'm serving, how can I set them up for massive, overwhelming success? How can I make sure that the greatest intention possible is served? And also for me, and I like this, under promise and over deliver. How can I say like, you're going to get this and it's going to be amazing and they're excited about it, and then do everything in my power to give them way more success than they thought was possible? The most important thing is to pick opportunities where you are so good at giving what they want that you can just do a little bit to help them, and you're learning and you're loving the journey of it. So giving things that you love to give. And I think, again, that's a little bit of picking the right thing, but it's a lot of the perspective of giving as well. So how many free sessions have I delivered in my life? Hundreds. How many workshops have I hosted with no attendees? Dozens. Dozens of public workshops with no one that showed up. But I wasn't doing it because I needed them to show up. I was doing it because I wanted to give. And so eventually somebody came, and I just gave my heart out and I helped them as much as I could. And sometimes I couldn't help them very much. I wasn't good enough yet. And then I got better. And if you just keep getting better and you keep giving for the other people to benefit, it's impossible to not be successful.
So thinking about how, there's the I am enough movement that Marissa has brought to us. For me, what I hear in what you're saying is almost like I have enough, where even if I'm not perfect, if there are people who are more skilled than I am, I have enough to give something. And I have something that I can give now rather than in 9 months, 9 years' time. So that's something I really want to take away and share with the people that I work with. What's one lesson you think we should all take away from this conversation about success?
Ask. I think asking, as simple as it sounds, if you can align in some way, maybe changing the vocabulary for yourself or the diction that we use with this, with the idea that you can't make mistakes, with the idea that there's like this higher order of things, some of the most miraculous things that have happened in your life were synchronicities or coincidences that could have never been planned, or you couldn't have seen yourself doing what you're doing now or having any success you've had when you were successful at some point. I think you can spin that around, and with a lot of gratitude in my hardest moments, you can say, like God or the universe or whatever you want to call it, source, energy, my highest self, my heart. If you're in a really tough space, you can get quiet with yourself. Some people, it might be movement, like going on a walk. That helps me a lot, just a quiet walk. For some people, it might be meditating. For some people, it might be having like a great coffee and a book. It might be going somewhere that inspires you, like an art museum, or looking at amazing works of art. It might be watching a business movie that's really inspirational. Some of my favorites are like the Ashton Kutcher Jobs movie, or like The Big Short is another one that seems to inspire me a lot. And I go to these places or go to these things and then say, I need inspiration right now, or I need to find more of this prosperity energy in my life, more abundance in my life. And I just go with the intention of having an hour or 30 minutes or sometimes even 10 minutes. And I say, gosh, like bring in this prosperity. And I imagine that gravity in myself. And I say, like, bring all those ideas, bring all those synchronicities, all those circumstances. And to this day, it's never not worked. I always just say, bring those opportunities, those coincidences, and bring me the ideas, and I will listen. And it's like some maybe are bad, and sometimes I'm like giggling because I'm like, that's such a bad idea. But then sometimes I get that beautiful energy and I go, that's a yes. And I might try 5, 6, 20 different opportunities until the one works, but I just trust that one of them will. And again, there's so much of this that comes down to like belief and perspective. It's always a combination of really doing things, doing the work, trying things, maybe failing a lot, but all those failures are the building blocks of the success.
Thank you. There's so much depth and wisdom in what you've shared today. So I know people are going to be watching this again and again and going through the chat. I've taken so much from this, and I can see our audience has as well. So thank you, Skip.